Welcome, everybody. Uh, Welcome back. Welcome. Hello. If you're a newbie to our Counselor Coffee Talk group here for specifically for you all school counselors, our partners in crime here. Our partners in solving crime, Peggy, I should say.
Yes, yes.
Is a better way to say it. But yeah, like we always do, we got a pretty decent crowd here, so let's just give everybody a minute or two, and then we will do some quick intros and housekeeping stuff for those of you that are new to us or haven't been around in a while, and then we'll dig into the content and not any earth-shattering updates here, but I know you all are very much paying attention to these FAFSA changes, especially after last year's calamity. Um, so and looking at us on what to expect this year and best practices and all that. So I certainly want to get you caught up to speed with everything that we know in real time here. Um, Okay, so quickly again, for those that are new to us, we are College Aid Pro. I'm one of the founders, Matt Carpenter. I'm here with my buddy Peg Keough. We're representing each side of the country. I'm just north of Boston. Peg's just outside of Seattle. And we are just our whole reason that we exist is trying to support school counselors, parents and students through this college maze, right? And specifically with the affordability piece, financial aid scholarships piece, that is our first language, that is our subject matter expertise, that's really our passion, right? That's what we care about. And we consider to be in tandem with you all, right? We're the tip of the spear trying to make this happen for families, and it's hard and it's confusing, and you got a million other things to do. So that's why we like to support you all specifically. So hopefully make your jobs a little bit easier. See a lot of our current school partners are on here, right? So you have us in to provide education for your families and utilize all our free resources. So if you are not on a part of that program, make sure that you talk to us. Um, and then I wanted to have, oftentimes I do this myself or we have some guests, but I wanted to have Peggy join me today. Number one, she is our director of education, the fairy godmother of financial aid. So she is very well versed and just every single day is paying attention to what is going on. She has some personal contacts within the Department of Education, that type of world. So we're very fortunate to have her a part of our team, and you guys can hear direct from her today on some of the updates. But Peggy, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can kind of talk through.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't know as many of you as Matt, so I'm delighted to be here. Nice to meet everybody. Yeah, as Matt said, I'm all financial. That's my background, financial industry. I always tell parents that I have twins, a boy and a girl, and they're done with college. But so I always say, I've been through this, so I get it. Probably one of my best credentials. But yeah, when it comes to all things of like educating parents, that's kind of my sweet spot. That's, my big responsibility here at CAP, and I love doing it. I love and you all are part of that, right? Educating you, helping you with pieces that there's just so much information flying. I was just telling Matt before we jumped on that I had a counselor write and say, should I tell my kids not to do the FAFSA October one and let them get some of the kinks out? I'm like, no, that's not how it's working this year. So I'm already hearing like incorrect information that there's just so much out there. So we, as Matt likes to say in general, we try and be the source of truth. We try and provide information across all this whole world of college financial planning, which is a massive world. We just try and be there with good information and support for all of you. Because I remember my two kids were in public school and they had a lot. Counselors had so much on their plate. So
Yeah, it's still, I don't think that's changed. So just quick housekeeping stuff. We're gonna record this. We're gonna make sure everybody gets a copy of the recording. As always, we want all your questions. Please put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat because that's really where we'll be paying attention. And then and again, it doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about today. If you have a wonky case study, you heard this about a certain school, whatever it is, that's kind of the point of what we're trying to accomplish. And if you're one of those schools that does not take advantage of all the free webinars we do and our free, net price calculators, all that stuff, I'm putting in the chat right now a link where you can book some time with our high school partnership coordinator. That's Anne Marie Sanderson. She's a delight, first of all, but she can just kind of learn about your particular school, what you're doing currently, what you see as your biggest kind of blind spots, and she can make a good assessment on how we can best support you, and again, provide any details that you want about us. But I guess, Peg, with that, why don't you just kind of talk through what the latest and greatest here? What do we know? Maybe what do we not know and about this? The this year's FAFSA, and then I'll kind of layer in my color.
Yeah, so basically, well, one thing to say too is that there are still some glitches, and you might have some kids that are still messing around with last year. So that's really hard and unfortunate, but that's still going on and they're still working on that. But what they're doing for this 25, 26, for the class of 2025 rollout, they got a lot of feedback from NCAN and NACAC and other entities. Hey, don't do a massive open if you're not ready. So they listen. So what they're doing is what they're calling it is beta 1, 2, 3, 4. So on October 1, like it's normally supposed to happen, the FAFSA will go live, but it's this beta 1 group. And what the government, what the ED actually did is they invited community-based organizations to apply to be part of beta 1. So they picked 6 different organizations. And so the students that those CBOs are working with, they're going to be doing in-person sessions to do the FAFSA completion with those students. The colleges that they're sending the FAFSA to are going to be involved in this beta testing. It's going to be tiny because it's only these 6 CBOs, and that's intentional. They really want to see how this goes. It's supposed to flow like it did before last year. So the colleges immediately get their ICERs. They immediately get the information they need. So the colleges are part of this because then they have to check, hey, Susie Smith, it was sent. Did you get it? What issues did we have? So it's a very tight checking the technology and the flow. And if things aren't working, the idea is we'll tie that down and hopefully get it right. And then beta 2, they'll expand it. They're asking for applications for that. And then that'll get into the language they said is maybe thousands, right? And beta 2. And then in beta 3, as they keep expanding, then they'll be in tens of thousands. So it's just a very intentional, slow rollout with tight watching of how the tech is flowing. Because we all remember last year, there were massive tech glitches, the signature stuff. I have not heard anything. They're not changing the FAFSA from anything that I've read or heard. It's just helping that rollout from that last year was not good, doing a better rollout. And they obviously don't have all the tech seamless. Not that tech is never seamless. We know that we're a tech company, but pretty much seamless. So they just didn't accomplish that last year. So that's how it's going. So if families are stressing and it's going live, what do I do? There's nothing they can do. If those students are not part of these 6 CBOs, they just have to hold tight. There's nothing to do. We gave this message last year to just tell people, hey, it is what it is. Most people are in this boat. The colleges have been through this now for 1 year. So the CSS profile schools, they're going to have their deadlines for the CSS profile. So that's really important that families are dialed into that piece. Because there could be deadlines November 1 easily, right? So that piece still needs to move forward, but for the FAFSA, it's just kind of a hold tight. They can get their FSA IDs and passwords. So we're telling everybody, just get that done because every year parents are doing that at the last minute. A deadline's looming for the FAFSA later in December, whenever it is, and they're not getting approval. So they can't submit because it goes to the Social Security Administration. then they have to get approval that they're good to go on their FSA IDs and passwords. So that's a huge message to share with all your students. Like, they need to go home, get that done. The parent that needs to do that, if they're married filing jointly, it's one of the parents. If they're divorced, it's the custodial parent. Um, that is something people can do now and be all set and ready. Yeah. So somebody put in, how early can they do this? They can do it now. They can do it now. I mean, if a student is a freshman in high school, they probably wouldn't do it that early because the government's going to change what happens, but yeah, they can get that taken care of right now.
Like, so I
So
get
that's really the update. That's really the update.
so a couple questions that I have, a couple questions that we got in the Q&A here. So basically this beta one that gets released on, 10/1 applies to basically nobody. It's such a small percentage of the population that odds are none of us are going to know anybody that are in that beta group, right? Just by law of large numbers. But
Most likely, yeah. It's pretty
do you have
small.
any intel on how that's being communicated? Like, did these school counselors have any expectation of, hey, you have students that are part of these CBOs at your high school, so make sure that they know. Do we even know how the mechanics?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I could reach out to my contact there and see how they're setting that up. Like, is there a way when a student is part of one of those CBOs? Because as a counselor, you probably, depending on how much involvement you have with that, you would want to know, right? So that's a good question, Matt. So I can ask that, if what kind of communication the CBO, if any, has, or what are they telling the students about letting the high schools know?
No,
Because
and
I
I
know they're doing it. I mean, it's hand holding to get those FAFSAs through. So I know that's the CBO's job, and that's why they were selected. So as counselors, you guys won't need to be a part of that, but it would be helpful for you to know, hey, this child goes to this high school, and the CBOs will know that,
just
obviously. So that's a good question. I'll look into that.
and then I believe this is fluid based on how this kind of first test goes. But do we have any idea on timeline and dates for the second and third groups? Or again,
No, wait, hold on. I've got my little cheat sheet here. September 24th. There's deadlines to apply to these. And let me just tell you, in case you're familiar with the CBOs, I'll tell you the six that were initially selected for beta one. It's Alabama Possible, Bridge to Life, and it's the number two, Bridge to Life. College Aim, Education is Freedom, the Scholarship Foundation of Santa Barbara, and the Scholarship Fund of Alexandria. So those are, okay, those are the six CBOs. This is what they've shared, Matt, as far as timing. Beta 2 launching mid-October, beta 3 early November, and beta 4 mid-November. So I would take that, but I wouldn't quote them on it, right?
yeah,
Hopefully it'll be stuck to that timeline if things are flowing the way they want. I would think
right.
it'll stay with that, but that's the basic flow. How does
Yeah,
someone get into the beta group? The student has to be working with one of those six CBOs.
right.
That's how they'll get selected.
And let me tell you something. You don't want to be a part of those beta groups. Those people are doing us all a favor that are volunteering to trudge through, this next iteration here, right?
Yeah, they are. They are. I talked to somebody at a big flagship university in this country, and he said we opted out. We said we don't want to be part of that testing. So the colleges and the universities have to be on board because it's it's a commitment. It's a commitment to help the government and ED troubleshoot whatever happens. So we should be thanking these organizations and the universities that sign up for it. But he's right. It's kind of like, don't get that electronic thing that's brand new. Let them get all the kinks out. I mean, that's how I think about it before I go buy something new. So Same
Yeah.
thing with the FAFSA. And if you remember last year, the colleges figured it out last year with deadlines. And so this isn't new to them, right? So they're going to have to figure out, okay, December 1, how are we going to deal with this? With, if we have early decision, if we have early action, what are the deadlines? But it's super important. It always is for these families to be all over the deadlines because they're going to be different. And I know people had a couple, like with the CSS profile schools, kids had an advantage there because what happened last year was the colleges would accept these kids, they would have the CSS profile, sometimes in November, quite often, and they would project the federal aid on award letters. It was always estimated, right? Because they need that FAFSA, but they can look at numbers and know, well, this family's Pell eligible or this family isn't, and there could be some subsidized loans. So some of the schools are doing that. So that was super helpful for those families because they had some insight into a package. But as we know, most schools don't require the CSS profile. So
Let me layer in a couple of things here, because and part of it just from a high level, and I'm glad we got this question because I think uh, it's right now it's about controlling the controllables. What can we control? What should we be doing now? And I think from you guys, the messaging is the the fear that a lot of families have is that what if I don't get in this early initial stage? We're going to get less money. And the families that are in this initial wave, they're going to get more money. There's going to be more resources, opportunities, etc. They're going to pay less for college. That's not true. Okay. It's going to have zero impact on how much these colleges cost you and your aid and your SAI and all that, right? These colleges know, just like last year, they're going to have to be fluid with their priority deadlines. Now, we have to make sure that we understand what the college's priority deadlines are. And it's very likely going to be, Peg mentioned the CSS profile schools. If you're applying early, they're going to be as early as November 1st, right? And you have to have that CSS profile in by November 1st. Ignore the FAFSA. How I'm basically coaching this, and I think we are, more or less as a team, and it's because I believe it's the best approach, is that we're almost telling people, guys, right now the FAFSA is a distraction. It's noise. There's nothing we can do with it. Don't even think about it. What I want you focused on right now is you're finalizing your list of colleges. You're going to be all over that CSS profile when it comes out October 1st or even a little bit early oftentimes, right? And that should be the focus. Now, in addition to that, we can start making some of these big decisions like, well, who is going to complete the FAFSA in the divorced or separated household? How are we going to value our business? Because now everybody has to do that, right, on the FAFSA like they haven't previously, only if you had over 100 employees previously. And then ultimately, and Peg mentioned this, it's our responsibility as educators and as parents and students to understand what these colleges are going to cost before we get the awards back, right? That we have to know that now, right? It's something we talk about every single time we're in front of anybody in this space, and we will continue to. And part of our responsibility, our obligation, right, is to make sure that families know exactly what schools are going to cost them before they even apply, right? So for those of you that don't utilize our platform in your communities, make sure you go take a look at this, right? Because one of the first things that we do is we're going to tell these families exactly what their SAIs are going to be at both the FAFSA only and CSS profile schools. We're going to tell them exactly what their net costs are going to be at any college they want to see in the country. And for those of you that follow along with us, you've seen Peg and I present on our net price calculator versus the college's net price calculators. And it's not new news. It wasn't a surprise to anybody to know that oftentimes sending families to a college's net price calculator can be a recipe for disaster is too dramatic, but it can be misleading, I guess, right? At a minimum, you want to check in more than one place. So we are always telling families, set up your free account, find out what these schools are going to cost you before you even, again, think about what we're doing with the FAFSA and the CSS profile and anything else, and making sure that you're building that list of schools with affordability in mind. So again, these are things we can do now. Who should be actually completing the FAFSA, how to value home equity versus our business, right? And then what are these schools going to cost us? If I'm not actually going to get my award to the middle of March, I should have a really good idea what that's going to look like now. So these are all the things that we should be doing um, right now, if we're not already. And again, that's constantly our message. Don't worry about all this mess that the FAFSA is and is probably going to be. We're just focused on what we can control today, right? Um,
And somebody, we were talking before we hopped on about the announcement that Notre Dame made this week about not giving loans. And so somebody put in thoughts on Notre Dame ditching the FAFSA. They're not ditching like they're not saying don't submit the FAFSA. They're just saying like some other Ivy League schools, hey, we're not going to package, like we're going to figure out your need. And that's the big thing that it is. So I'll go into that in a minute, but we're going to figure out your need. And then whatever your need is, say it's $40,000, we're not going to fill any of it with federal loans, or some schools have their own loans, right? We're going to put grants or whatever. They'll still keep work study in there. So they're not ditching the FAFSA. Kids should still submit the FAFSA to Notre Dame. It sounds really neat. And as Matt and I were saying, like parents will hear that and say, awesome, no loans. I'm gonna get all this money from them. It's gonna be affordable. I mean, the bottom line is the loans they give is 5,500 of their 90,000 plus price tag anyways. So it's fine if those are grants, but what families really need to understand is, how is Notre Dame calculating my need? They're using my home equity. How is all of that coming together? Because most parents, I've had one parent in decades of work that ever saw their SAI/EFC and said, oh, that's affordable. Most parents are just like, how the heck do they think I can afford that? So it's fine to say no loans and it sounds nice, but ultimately that's what really matters. What does Notre Dame think that we can afford, and is that even affordable to us? When you do the math. So I don't know if you want
yeah,
to add anything to that, Matt.
I even have a little bit more of a cynical view, you might say. I don't know if that's the word, but I think it's a marketing gimmick. I know it's a marketing gimmick. And there's zero upside to it, but I would make an argument that the cons outweigh the pros, right? And they're not the first school to do this. A lot of like plenty of the Ivies do it, a lot of the NESCACs do it, the Amherst, Williams, Middleberries of the world. But the problem is I think a lot of people hear this, like Peg said, and like, oh my goodness, we're going there for free, or we don't need to borrow. Because that's intuitively what the message is the message that is being delivered, right? Great. So a family might feel like we can come up with $30,000 a year for college. Beautiful. I guess that's what we'll pay at Notre Dame, right? And we all know the calculation doesn't work that way. Most people look at what they're expected to pay. It's not even close to their reality, right? So you're going to have some families that are going to be expected to pay $90,000 at Notre Dame, or maybe 50,000, and they don't have close to the ability or resources to do that via cash flow or savings, which means they're going to have to borrow. And when we talk about borrowing, most of us know the best place, the place that we always start, and this is a universal recommendation that we make, is the $5,500 federal government student loan, right? That is usually included as part of the financial offer. So most families at these schools that ultimately have to borrow are led to believe that is now not on the table, because it's not they'd have to be very sophisticated to know this, right? Because it's not included in the financial aid award letter. So they just assume, okay, I guess that I gotta borrow the entire difference through Sally Mae or the plus loan or whatever, right? And where in fact they're still entitled to borrow that, but they have to jump through some extra hoops. The student has to reach out directly to the financial aid office to say, hey, I know this wasn't offered in my financial aid package, but I'm entitled to it and I would like to take advantage of it. So again, certainly there's some nice elements to it, but I'm not a believer in it coming from the best of intentions is just my frank belief. And
Yeah,
and
I agree. I agree. It's a marketing thing. And it is I mean, I do this all the time to parents. I'm like, call them and tell them you want the unsubsidized loans. And in this case, it could easily be that they are still eligible for the subsidized under the federal formula, but Notre Dame is giving them a few grants there. They have to be savvy so that they know what they're still eligible for, because it won't be evident on the award letter, basically.
Yeah. So again, that's just usually we see those things and roll our eyes a little
What
bit.
I would rather see Notre Dame do is say, hey, we're not looking at your home equity. That's off the table. I'd rather have them change the way they look at families to calculate their SAI. And by the way, you probably noticed this if you look at award letters at all, but a lot of the CSS profile schools in the first year rollout, they did not call their second SAI. They were still calling it either expected family contribution or family contribution, which I actually think is okay, because then it's very clear for families. The SAI is the federal piece that you get Pell, subsidized loans, work study. That's the one, the EFC or family contribution. That's what Notre Dame or Stanford or whatever, Grinnell is calculating to give out their institutional aid. So it might be less confusing for families, but we just didn't anticipate that. We just figured, they call it SAI, but just so you know, they're not doing that, just from a terminology standpoint.
Another question here: does the CSS profile need to get completed annually, yearly? It depends on the college, right? I would say I don't know. I'm very much going off of the top of my head here. I bet it's pretty close in terms of 50-50 in terms of colleges that require that for all 4 years versus some that require it and it's only the first year. Although I'm walking that back. I think more than 50% required all 4 years. I'm thinking of like,
That's what I would say, more than 50, but and they can always, if they don't require it and they get the FAFSA and it doesn't make sense to them, they're well within their rights to reach out and ask for this or that to reevaluate the aid every year. But I always tell families you can just ask the school and they'll tell you what their policy is. But yeah, usually more often than not, you're doing it every year.
yeah, and we'll see. We're going to see some more schools require a CSS profile this year. We'll see how many, just specifically due to the FAFSA kind of mess. So maybe they can get awards out earlier. We saw some schools even change on the fly last year with those delays. They said, "Hey, you know what? We can you can send us a CSS profile now if you want." So obviously that just goes back to our theme that we're always teaching with it's your responsibility, parent, student, to see exactly what your colleges are requiring, what the due dates are, etc. And the CSS profile won't be available till October 1st. Sometimes it comes out a couple days early. Usually it comes out a couple days
I
early.
keep checking. I'm checking every day now because
Publicly,
I need to get my slides all ready and get in
that's
there.
right.
But last year it went live quite a bit early. It was
Yeah,
almost 2 weeks. I
right.
was shocked, but I looked this morning and it's still not live for next year. So
Yeah, and again, yeah, just again, every school is school specific, and like Peg said, they can and will change their requirements from one year to the next. But our rough guesstimate was that probably more than 50% of schools that require the CSS profile required to be submitted every year, right?
yeah, and it's submitted. There's a question about how it's submitted. So the family will log in using the student's, it's College Board. So the student's College Board login credentials, their email, their password. And if the family is married, whatever parents kind of own in that piece of it, and the family can help the student submit that. If they're divorced, then the parent who's the custodial parent by the federal definition, which is the parent that provides the most financial support on a year look back from literally when they're submitting the form. It's not based on a calendar year. So that's another thing. That's a lot of planning that families can do if they're 50-50 on financial support. That parent, that custodial parent, will submit the CSS with the child. And then the non-custodial parent will submit what's called the non-custodial profile. Separate document. They both go to College Board. So, if the family, which is common, that exes don't share financial information with each other anymore, it's completely private. College Board gets both of them. And then the colleges have have information from both biological parents. So that's how that works. So when it goes live, they can get in there and start it. You don't need any special IDs like on the FAFSA side. It's just the students' login credentials. And you just go to cssprofile.collegeboard.org. The minute they see 2025, 26, that means it's live. And I'm hoping it's pretty similar to last year. They did a revamp a couple years ago that I don't like as much. It's not as easy to navigate through. But then last year it didn't change much. It was pretty much the same as the year before. So we don't need to have two forms changing at once, and that's
Yeah,
a
that's
little
right.
bit too much for me.
Yeah, one at a time is good enough. So, got a question about, are there state mandates where the FAFSA has to be required? Is it on a district level? Are there not mandates? This varies, right? So some states, and this is happening more and more frequently, are requiring that every single high school student complete and submit the FAFSA to the extent that they can control, but there's a decent amount of the execution of that, I believe, falling on the shoulders of you all as school counselors. Now, again, I think the intentions are good here. I mean, this is a hard call to make at such a with numbers this big in terms of volume of students. And again, there's plenty of students that have zero intentions of going to college, and it's not a good fit. And some that you can't chase down and get their financials or get their parents' financials, etc. But the intention is that this is at least the starting point for minimizing, a family's cost for college, right? That's the foundation. Now, at CSS profile schools, the CSS profile is even more important than the FAFSA, I would argue. But on the whole, right, it's the FAFSA that is going to make us eligible for discounts. Okay, so that's why they're trying to get more and more states and districts and personnel at the high school level on the front lines to help these families get these FAFSAs across the finish line. Now, again, this is something that we do all the time. So if you're not partnering with us yet, we do line by line instructions through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. And it's not just here's how to create your FSA ID. We'll also make sure that we're strategic to say, get your hands off the computer. Do not put your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. Here's some tips in terms of how to value your business or best practices, or here's what not to do, right? And then where we can, right, we try to do this on the front lines, right? Like I mentioned, I'm in the Boston area, so we partnered with some Title I schools here, and we'll continue to do so, where we go in there physically, where we have a few of us in this neck of the woods in different pockets of the country. So we're always looking to have an impact, right? So if you're a school that's like, I would benefit from that, please let us know. Obviously, the in-person stuff, our hands are tied in terms of where we have our experts around the country, but we're pretty spread out geographically, and our whole team is great in terms of doing that, impact stuff, and we have a ton of fun with it. I love hanging out with the kids and them and their parents and trying to help them get through that. And last year it was a beast. So,
there's a few questions in here. How do undocumented students go through this process? This beta one, I mean, they had a flow last year and it didn't work, along with a lot of other things. And I know they had a whole flow with parents that didn't have social security numbers. And so I think that was the thought process with these CBOs, is to get a good cross section of different types of students so that it would test their technology and how it's supposed to flow through. So I'm really kind of waiting here through this beta one. And then what I'm hoping they will do is, as they get through this, they'll, like they did last year, they'll release, like they had a whole PDF of this is what you need to do if your family falls into this category. And so that's what I'm hoping they're going to do here, because the different scenarios, not just the standard family, married, filing jointly, all US citizens, that one was glitching too. But there's all the other ones that are a little bit more challenging. So I don't have an answer for that right now. I'm hoping that they will come through when we get through this beta one, because I wouldn't want to share what they were saying last year because that was glitching. That wasn't working anyways. So we'll just, hold tight on that stuff.
Look,
Yeah, there's a question about the FAFSA negatively affecting admission. So this is a super common question. Basically, colleges I've talked to people at the different colleges, as a cross section. And what I've been told is, look, if we're not need blind, right? If we literally have no idea, where they use this information is when they're finishing up their class, the last 10%, 15%. And they would look at potentially two students, same academics, same, they want them from the holistic review the same amount. They're going to be a great addition to the campus, yada, yada. Student A is Pell Grant eligible. Student B is full pay, or there's going to be a $10,000 merit award or whatever that happens to be. Yeah, they might pick student B when it gets down to finishing up their class. But what I've been told, never worked at a university or college in financial aid, they're not doing that from the first student on, right? They know, these colleges know, we're going to have full pay families, which they love, right? Fills up their coffers. And then we're going to have families that have now negative SAIs, and they have full need. And then we're going to have families in between. What they really want is they want to have the right kids on campus. Sure, a lot of college, Harvard could afford to have all Pell Grant kids on campus, right? Because they have such a massive endowment. Most universities can't afford that. So it comes into play, but that's how I've been told by people behind the curtain, if you will, that it works. And Matt and I encourage everybody to submit the FAFSA for many reasons. One being, some schools want it on file for merit aid. So then you're leaving 5 figures on the table if you don't submit. So I just tell families, just put it out of your mind. You need to submit the FAFSA. If it affects admissions down the road, if you're in one of those cases, then that school just wasn't meant to be, right? That's the way I view it. That I didn't even think twice with my two about submitting it. But I know it is a stressor for parents because they think it might hurt admission chances. But I also tell them, and then I'll let you talk. Sorry, Matt. Look, if you don't submit it, and you have need and you're worried about submitting it because they won't admit you, well, then what do you do when your child gets admitted? You can't afford to pay it. Then you're going deep into high interest rate student loans. That's not good for your family either. So I think they just need to take a deep breath sometimes and think through things.
yeah. So, I mean, Peg and I feel the exact same way about this, right? How I articulate it is I say, my short answer is kids generally get in or don't get in based on their merit, based on what the college is looking for, right? On occasion, a percentage of them comes down to a business decision. That's just the nature of the beast of, going to college here in the United States. Um, in some ways, families can have their cake and eat it too, right? You can still submit the FAFSA and not check that box to apply for financial aid at college. Because I'm getting another question outside of making sure we're eligible for merit-based scholarships at every school. Why should we submit the FAFSA? It guarantees that we're entitled to that $27,000 in federal direct student loan program as a student, right? And even if we don't need our kids to borrow, we have families, some of the families we work with are really wealthy. We still have them do that, pay off that student loan for the kid. They graduate with a 780 credit score, right? So it's just a smart strategy to take advantage of, and it's there, right? It's an option. So we're always like, why wouldn't you do it? Type of deal.
Another big reason is some schools, if you don't apply for financial aid freshman year, they will never allow you to apply again. And I've had families that they want to apply senior year and the school just says, no, you told us way back when you didn't need it. We're not going to allow it. I mean, with COVID, it was huge. People had businesses, they were making plenty of money, da 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 da, and all of a sudden they were closed. And the schools can be nice and say yes, but some schools, that's just their policy. So I always tell families, you want to roll the dice that life isn't going to change at all. it's just, to me, it's not a chance to take. It's just better to submit the forms, and at least you know you've got that as an insurance policy. If something happens, God forbid, there's a death in the family that's unexpected. I mean, things happen. So
Yeah, agreed 100%. So my quick summary in terms of what the FAFSA, do nothing right now. Everybody just tell everybody to relax, chill out, pay attention to us. We are all over this. Usually we get intel before it's even publicly kind of released, and it's something that again we're proactive every single day with. So again, keep paying attention. We'll do these every other week. Right into our email is counselor@collegeaidpro.com, right? Where we have eyeballs on that every single day. That is just for school counselors, any and all questions that you have. And if you don't partner with us already, again, just this is what we provide, right? We provide education throughout the year, right? For your high school. We always have two presenters. We record everyone. We have two presenters, so whichever one of us is not talking can be in the Q&A. And we give you all the copies, spoon feed you everything, so you can just let parents know, hey, here's what's going on. Here's when these presentations are. So make sure, again, let me just grab this link that you.
I just did
Oh,
it. I just put her link in the chat again
so
for Anne
book some time
Marie.
with Anne Marie if you haven't already. And then you can see again throughout the year, we're doing our foundational presentation, line by line through the FAFSA and the CSS profile. We do a presentation on private scholarships and the verification process, understanding award letters and appealing, and then finally paying the bill, right? That's one that I would say is less sexy, but very valuable, right? And I think as school counselors, most school counselors I know aren't comfortable giving advice to parents in terms of like, should you take a home equity loan versus borrow your 401k versus private versus the plus loan, whatever it happens to be. And that's what we do, right? To say, here's the pros and cons of all your options. Here's how your family can find their best rate, etc. Um, and then again, too, just making sure that you and all your families know again, transparency is always the word that we use. What are colleges actually going to cost you? You can search just based on who's going to give you the most in financial aid, who's going to give you the most in scholarships, how much you're going to have to borrow at each of these colleges at the finish line, if anything. Every private scholarship in the country is in here. So line by line through the FAFSA, through the CSS, and again, for every major pain point of this process, we want to make sure that you and everybody in your district, school, et cetera, are armed with the resources. But I would say almost most importantly, I failed to mention this at the top. So for those that stayed with us, anybody going to NACAC in LA next week? Well, put it in the chat if you're going to be out at
Or
NACAC.
shoot up in a fingers up emoji if you're going to NACA.
Emojis. So two things there. Number one, we will be out there, so we will have a booth there. Okay, we're speaking Friday morning at what time, Peggy? Do you remember?
We're speaking at 7:45 in the morning in Expo Hall, where they probably have some food, so you'll probably be going there anyways. Yeah,
Yeah.
before the session starts, so it doesn't conflict with any of the sessions you might want to
Okay,
attend.
so 7:45 we're going on. We're gonna
No, I
ask
think
you
it's 8:45 to
8:45, quarter
9:30. Yeah.
quarter of nine. Okay, so we will be there. We'll be expanding upon. There'll be certainly some overlap of what we talked about today, but we will be expanding upon this. Who cares if you come to see us Friday? We hope you do. But we are hosting a Cappy Hour. Get it, everybody? Cappy Hour. Um, Friday at 5 o'clock. If you want to go again, just write into Anne Marie, counselor at collegeapro.com. It's right by the convention center, so it's right across the street. We got a nice little setup. It's just, we're gonna obviously provide food and drinks, whatever you guys want, and just to shake some hand with some folks that we've only known virtually, some folks that we have known for a long time, but we don't get to see much, and then some new people. We'd love to meet some of you folks that are newbies to kind of our ecosystem here. So please just write in there. We'd love to treat you to a good time. Me and Peggy know how to get down too. Let me. It's not all business, right, Peggy?
Yeah, we gotta after we present, then I say we have to do it Friday night. I'm not doing it Thursday night because I gotta present. So
Yeah,
we're
that's right.
still serious, but then we have fun. So
That way.
yeah, we'd love to meet you. Come over. We did it early in case you're signed up for another session later. You can do both.
Do a little pregame with us. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, please come say hi, introduce yourselves, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. And
Yeah,
otherwise,
come by our booth. We'll be there, in exhibit hall Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, and then we're speaking Friday.
yep, yep. Um, okay, and then yeah, and Nikki, where you can get information about this, my recommendation is that you just book some time with Anne Marie, who is our high school partnership coordinator. Again, I'm putting that link in the chat there. You also go onto our website. We have a page just for counselors if you want to just check us out from a high level. But
Well,
that
and are we gonna put out some sort of notification about the Cappy Hour? We'll just send it out to.
yeah, we will give you everybody that's on the list. We have kind of a working guest list, and we will give the specifics. I want to say it's like tap 33 or something like that, but I promise you will be notified of exactly where and when and all that. Thank you, Peg. Appreciate you
All
joining.
right. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Hope to see you in California.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Take care.